Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. We're here on our recently constructed highway coming into Houston, and in this video we're going to focus on getting machines and goods delivered to some of the cities out in this area where our highways are, and then we're also going to take a look around and do some other small minor improvements across the map just to make sure everything is running up to speed. And so I think we can see here we've proven that we can bring in enough machines to fuel not only Salt Lake City, but probably a few more cities as well. So I think we're going to look into delivering machines over to Houston probably, since they need some, and Houston's our biggest city, so we're obviously going to want to grow that even more. And then Portland also should need machines. Portland needs a lot more, so we'll have to think of a maybe more direct way of getting machines into Portland just due to the high demand. But I think for now, if we can connect up to at least Houston in this video, I'll be more than happy with that. And then we'll also start to test out bringing goods in, much like we did with the machines, just bringing in goods, and we'll start by delivering them in Salt Lake City to see if that works. And then we can go from there and deliver them to the other cities as time goes on. And then another thing I think we're going to do is get goods from this factory going back on the return trip with this train here, as it currently doesn't take anything with it. We'll send goods on the return trip all the way back to our steel mill here, where then those goods will get transferred to this port, and then we can also ship machines out, or ship goods out along with our machines. Alright, so first, before we get into any of that though, I think we're going to quickly detail this oil well up a little bit. I believe it's the only industry that we haven't detailed yet that we're currently using. So we'll add some details here, and then from there we can start to ramp up production on a lot of these lines so we can supplement getting goods out of here and then getting those goods out to Salt Lake City. Alright, and now we're back. This was just a quick little detailing of these oil wells. I think this came out pretty good. A lot of these areas I quite like, especially the area where we started to add some bushes and vegetation. I think those really help bring this area to life. Now I think there could be more around the border, but I think this is perfectly fine for what it is. We can see that it is functioning. I suppose if we really want to, we can set this line to use both terminals, so we're not limiting how much oil we're bringing out of here. So we should be able to then speed this up, and we should start to see them using the other platform behind here. But overall, I think this turned out well. I think it's going to work out fine, and it will definitely help us in the long run with revving up production on our goods line. Alright, so first, before we start worrying about bringing goods over, I want to worry about getting machines over to Houston. And so, if we take a look here, we have this train which currently takes tools and food over to Houston, and then it brings construction materials and fuel back. Hopefully we can find one of these trains real quick. So here's one that's currently bringing construction materials and fuel back to Salt Lake City. And I'm not sure if we can really adjust this much more in terms of increasing capacity. I think when it comes to goods and machines, we might have to run a separate train on these lines. So we can see here this train is carrying a full load of tools and food, and that's fine, but I think what we need to do is think about how we can eventually bring in machines and goods, and then we'll probably have to send some more resources on the trip back. We might be able to attach on some more construction materials, since it seems like we're trying to get a lot out of this one area. So we might be able to use goods cars and flat cars to deliver machines and goods from Salt Lake City and then return with construction materials. I think that might be the way to go, since Salt Lake City still needs a lot more construction materials. And so I think let's roll with that. We'll go with that idea. We'll run two separate lines on this with two trains that are, or each line is going to be built differently. So this one's going to mainly take on tools and food, and then the other one's going to mainly take on machines and goods. Now if we take a look at what Houston needs, it looks like eventually it will need about 300 goods and machines. So that train's not going to be too hard to build. And then theoretically, I believe about 150 would be coming back for construction materials, because we'd be using flat cars. And so let's build a train first. Let's see if we can get this working, and then we can start to adjust our line rates as we start to determine what is and isn't working. Alright, so while building this train, there is one thing that we could do, which is use these super heavy flat cars, since they can carry machines and goods, and then they can also bring construction materials. Unfortunately, most of the box cars that we have or would be using cannot carry construction materials, which I suppose makes sense. And then the regular flat car can't take machines or goods. So I think we might use these super heavy flat cars. We'll grab a whole ton of these, and that'll pretty much be what's delivering the resources to Houston. And then this time, thankfully, we can actually get a full load of construction materials on the way back. So ideally this train runs full in both directions. So we just need to then we'll start off with this many cars, we'll find an engine for it, and then we will adjust from there. Alright, so we use this Heavy Pacific 462. We'll buy that, and we'll just start off with one and set up a new line. that goes from Salt Lake City over to Houston. And then in Salt Lake City, we want it to load goods and machines and unload construction materials. And then in Houston, we're going to have it load construction materials and unload goods and machines. So that should work out. We'll just have to let this line run for a bit, and then we can start to check out how it's doing. So real quick, as we take a look at this train leaving the depot now, it does operate at a rate of 153, which I think is okay. I think what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 more cars to the end of this, and then duplicate it, get a second train, and that'll get us a little bit over 300. So that'll account for growth in Houston, and then it should be able to help fully satisfy demand here in Salt Lake City then. And so we're going to wait a little bit for that train to come through, but we can already see we're getting some construction materials starting to build up on this line. And both lines will be competing for construction materials. And it looks like we're starting to almost push our limits here at this construction materials plant. So we might have to end up placing another one across the street here, just so we can get that production out. But I think if we aim to max this line out, we're almost fully supplying Houston, and then all that excess can head over to Salt Lake City and Portland as those resources get shipped out. And so let's first work on getting this maxed out. So our stone line, wherever that is, right here, we'll want to add trucks until this is up to 800. And I just want to make sure we're not overloading any of our streets currently, and it looks like we're fine. There's a bit of a holdup here, but it doesn't seem to be too bad. So we'll just come in and we'll duplicate some more until we get up to 800. Hopefully it shouldn't be too many more trucks. And so this says we should be at perfectly 800 with 100 vehicles. So we'll stick with that. That means this will be pumping out 800 resources. Houston needs 189, so let's make sure that's covered first. And if we take a look, I believe we're dropping those resources off here. That looks like it's still covering all of our construction materials. So realistically, if we can get that line rate up to 189, so this one, we'll just get a few more trucks, 204, that should be just fine. And then that means we would need 600 getting shipped over to our train station here. So right now we're only bringing 323 over, and I think we want to just simply duplicate the amount of trucks and maybe sell off 1 or 2. That gets us pretty much right around the 600. So now we should have a rate of 600 goods coming in here. And so we just had this train come and pick up a load of construction materials. It's not full, but it will get fuller as demand sort of starts to switch between these two lines. I think our new line is going to get a lot more construction materials building up than the other one, just because it can carry more. But we'll just have to let that run and even out as time goes on. And so if we take a look here, Salt Lake City is taking 300 construction materials currently, and then Portland is currently taking about 40. So we have about 300 more capacity that we can distribute. So let's first see our construction materials line, and that is delivering right in the heart of where most of these are intended on going. I think what we're going to do is we're going to split this into two lines, I think. So yeah, I think we're going to split this into 2 lines. We're going to delete this one and move it up 1 block so that covers everything up here. And now I suppose we could actually move it over one street, but then we run into issues with it being on the same road as our buses, and I'm not sure if we really want to deal with that. So I think we'll just leave it where it is, and then we can get a second line. We can just get that placed somewhere around here, and that'll help cover some of the ones more up this way. And of course we'll have to set up a new line to cover that. But this one can handle 432. That's probably a bit overkill, so we can sell maybe 2 or 3 of them. So 360, I think I'm okay with that. We'll set up a new line here. And this will go from that same spot. We'll have it come up and take that waypoint, drop off here, and then return back on this road. And then of course we'll have to set this properly to only take construction materials, and I believe we should be good. And so if we take a look at that line rate, that's up at 334. So we could probably even sell a few more. So we'll sell 1 from each line, I think. Or we'll probably sell 2 more from this line. So they're both sitting around 300, which should cover pretty much everything there. And then that should start to draw even more demand from our construction materials plant here in Houston. Alright, so moving on, I want to start getting goods coming along on this boat line into Salt Lake City. So again, I think we're going to have this train bring the goods on the return trip. However, that does mean that we're going to have to start ramping up production at the chemical plant and the steel mill so that it can handle the increased draw of goods. Currently, it's kind of keeping up pretty well, but I think it could be much better. I think maybe what we could try to do is target a rate of 400, or maybe we'll just go a little bit smaller and target a rate of 300. So yeah, I like that idea. We'll target a rate of 300 goods. I think that'll work out just fine. But first, that means we need to make sure this train is moving goods at that rate. And so we can see it's only moving at a rate of 465, which means if we divide that in half, that's about 230, which is pretty much what we're seeing here. Because it takes 2 resources, it can only bring in a maximum of 230 per resource, which is what we're seeing. So if we wanted to get that to 300, we need to get this train's line rate up to 600 or 600 plus. So we might just throw on a 3rd train, and then we'll work off of whatever that rate is. So let's just do that real quick. And so we actually end up with a rate of about 700. So I think that's a good target. That means we need 350 per resource. And so let's start here at the chemical plant. This actually looks like it's already handling, or it's already producing the 350 that we need. We can just double check that with these line rates, and it looks like that's about correct. We might just get a few more vehicles. We'll bring it up to 400 just so we make sure that we're bringing that in. So for instance here, this would need to bump up to 800. We'll just have to get a few more vehicles to get that working. So 800 there. This line, we just toss on 2 or 3 more vehicles to get that up to 400. So then that goes up to 400. And then we should be fully covered now on this chemical plant. And then the tricky part is this steel mill, as we're not getting perfectly clear numbers here, and it's going to get a little hard to ramp up our production because these trucks are already starting to occasionally wait. However, we can see here they aren't delivering their full resources, so maybe this increased demand will help draw that out. We can see here, yeah, these coal mines are producing, but they're not shipping, which means there's not enough industries calling for the coal. And so what that means is we probably either need to add more of these industries here, or we can just bump it up one, because these are all producing at their max level. So I think maybe these two, if we configure these a bit more. So really all we have to do is double everything. So double the amount of iron and coal needed, and then double the output of steel. So it takes 4 of each and then makes 2 steel. We can see that greatly increases our maximum production numbers here. So from 160 to 320. We'll just do the same here real quick. And then that bumps right up to 320. And so we'll start with that small increase first. We'll see if that can bring up our numbers here at the coal. Actually, it looks like it's already bringing up our numbers here at the coal mine as the shipment numbers just jumped up. So we'll wait for that to update. But then obviously this ore mine down here, this needs bumped up. So we'll do 4x, or actually let's do 5x, get that to 800 so that it matches the coal mines. And then we'll just have to make sure that these trucks are able to bring that out, which they are. And then these iron trucks here should be able to take out the full 800. We're actually moving a few too many, so perhaps selling a few vehicles wouldn't be so bad here. We'll bring that down just a little bit. We won't run so close down to 800, but whatever we end up with should work. And then as for coal, we can make some minor adjustments here to get that line rate up. And so now we should be bringing in even more iron and coal to this whole steel mill. And hopefully we should see that this will be able to satisfy our increased demand to provide for goods. And so now all we should have to do is grab this goods train, manage the line, and then all the way out here where it unloads everything, we're going to have it load goods. And then back here in our steel mill, we're going to have it unload those goods. Now, I think what we're going to do, just so we don't clog up these boat lines, I think we're going to get trucks coming out of this side of the steel mill, and then just follow this road here, and then simply drop off at this machines factory. So what we're going to have to do is just quickly upgrade these streets. And then, of course, we'll need a station to move these goods. And I think what we'll have to do is just bring that off of here. So we'll just drag this road out this way. Do something like this. And then we'll just have to place this. Everything should be set here. And then we can get our trucks going. And so we'll start here. Drop off at the other platform at this station. We'll set things up properly. Load goods. Unload everything. And then the last thing we'll have to do is this boat line here. Manage the line. And then add some goods there. And then we'll toss on a few more vehicles. A few more boats just to be able to handle that. I believe these boats do have 2 compartments. So they should be able to Yeah, these boats have 2 compartments, so they should be able to split machines and goods should they need to. But that's just something we'll keep an eye out as time goes on. And then now that that line is set to move machines and goods, we can follow that down now to Salt Lake City, where then we can just deliver those goods right into where they need it, which looks like we already have a truck station waiting. So we'll go to our road depot, grab a few trucks, and then we'll set those up to deliver all the way up here those goods. Alright, and so it's going to take a while before we see any of those goods at all, because this is pretty much about as far as we can move resources. We're pretty much going from corner to corner of the map. So it's going to be a while before we see anything relating to goods reaching Salt Lake City. But we can start to track it and make sure that it's working by coming out here to Roswell. And if we look at the consumers, nothing has updated yet, but I'm sure once our vehicles start hitting the stations, those will start to update. And actually, real quick, I think we checked the wrong thing. We need to have this checked to load goods here. And now we should start to see goods popping up all the way over at the goods factory. And so we do start to see this number slowly going up and starting to populate here. That'll slowly increase as until it reaches the, I guess, proper proportion with the other needs. The goods factory is upgrading right now due to the increased demand. And again, we should see this sit around 350 to 400-ish at the moment. And then once we know for sure that we can get goods all the way over to Salt Lake City, we can start to scale everything up on in this area. Alright, and so I just realized that we set up our line to bring machines and goods into Houston, but we didn't actually set up any lines to deliver those machines. So let's first set up that line, and then we're going to figure out how we can first solve this traffic issue that's starting to pop up here. But it looks like machines are needed at this stop here, which we are already using for some other lines. So it should be pretty easy to just grab a few trucks. And so we'll start off with 8. Set these up on a new line. And then those are going to go from... These will probably go from where our food is coming in all the way up to this stop here. Now I do want to change one thing. I want to make sure it's not going on this road because we're already starting to have traffic issues. So let's set up some waypoints here and here. And then we'll have to come back out, grab our machines, manage the line, and then from here have it come into that stop. And it looks like it does just loop around and comes back down the main street, so that is perfectly fine. And now we should start to see machines coming in through this train station. And so now we get to deal with our next problem, which is our truck issue that we got going on here. Now one solution is we can reroute our stone trucks to only take the main roads. Then they'll turn, come down, and then come through this way, which could work, but I want to try to avoid overpopulating this road. I think one thing that might work is just simply extending this street here. I think if we just grab this, bring this straight down and connect to this road. Well, actually, that probably won't work too well because one of the lines stuck is our tools line. Actually, one thing we can do is, again, we'll add waypoints. We can grab this line here, manage it, and then we'll have it go through the waypoints. And this way that might help alleviate some of the traffic. We'll try just doing one way. We'll let this run, see how that goes. Now, that did seem to help a little bit. Another thing we could do is have our stone trucks exit this way, but I'm not too convinced on doing that. It does look like we're about to clear up this road here, so that might actually help out a little bit. But it looks like this is taking fuel somewhere. And I think that might be part of our issues. I'm not sure if we intended on moving fuel. Yeah, I don't think we're intending on moving fuel to here, but it's doing something. That's an issue for another time to sort out. Actually, maybe changing where we're delivering fuel might help with some of this traffic. So I think maybe if we build a new truck stop here, that'll cover a good portion of our fuel needs. And then I'm not sure where our other one will be, but if we just move this one off of that road and do this, that should actually help a good bit with clearing up this road. And then what we can do is, I think we'll leave this with trucks delivering fuel. It's not that much of an issue. We will just clean this up a bit, make sure that it's only doing what we want it to. So here at the train station, it is unloading construction materials and loading fuel. So we want to make sure that we clarify that. And then up at the construction materials plant, it is loading construction materials and unloading fuel. So we'll keep that. That should work out. That actually helps a good bit with some of our lines here. So unfortunately, there's not much more we can do. I think we just have a lot of stone trucks using this line, and perhaps maybe they just need to space out a bit more, or something else. The only other option we have left is to maybe do an unload stop somewhere up here, and then we do like a one-way road situation where the stone trucks come in here and then get dropped off down here, which that would actually help alleviate a lot of this traffic. However, we would be limiting ourselves to only one unload opportunity, so I'm not too sure if I want to fully commit to that. I think I want to give this just a bit more time and see if there's something to work out there. But obviously, if or whenever we expand this construction materials plant, I think we're going to have to come up with something that spreads out this traffic a bit more. Alright, so I made one last ditch effort change here. So we're going to have our stone trucks actually come down and around. So we are going to keep it off the main road as much as possible, but we're just going to have it turn around and hopefully not have this huge line of traffic like we see here. But we do have to give that time to cycle through. So I think we're going to wait. We'll come back and check on that later. But I do want to go through and do some small minor upgrades around the map real quick. Alright, so now while we wait for things to clear up in Houston, I want to come to Allentown and extend the street grid here. This is something we've talked about for a while. The city is extremely restricted to the point where it's taking over some of these far out roads and building its own parts of the city. So we're going to extend the streets here, hopefully give Allentown plenty of room to grow, and then hopefully once we're done with that we can go over to Houston and see how well our traffic is doing there. Alright, and so I think this is going to be all for our Allentown expansion. Again, it's nothing too crazy, but we did extend our main roads. We extended these roads up here. Let's just make sure everything is locked first so that the city doesn't go crazy with it. So it looks like we're all good there. And then we extended this area here, which will most likely end up being a residential area. So it's a nice sort of lower density residential area as we come out towards the Allentown port, which we'll probably want to start to scale this up soon as we'll be bringing in more resources to Allentown. Not anytime soon, but probably at some point we'll be bringing in a lot more resources when we want to start to grow Allentown. So that's just something to think about, but I think I'm pretty happy with how it's growing. We have this mountain here that I think would be kind of fun to sort of build around. I'm sure the city would probably start to extend out this way and then up into this area. I'm not sure if the city will grow far enough to reach this part of the water, but it would be really neat if it could. And then obviously over here we're going to have to somehow handle these train tracks, which we might have to end up just rebuilding and build it a little bit tighter to this hill, and then use this hill as a divider between a sort of lower section by the river and then a higher section up here. But anyway, I think that's my plan for Allentown, but for now, I think it's good. We'll let it grow, fill in all the spaces, but now let's go check back in on Houston. And so it looks like we still have these traffic issues with Houston. I think we just can't have this many trucks coming through this single station. So We're not going to handle it right now, but I think that'll be the first thing we do in the next video. We'll add a second industry probably over here somewhere. We'll split up our drop-offs so that we have less trucks all taking the same way. And then hopefully we'll see that this whole area clear up, and we'll be able to get a lot more construction materials out of this area. And then real quick, let's just take a look at how our airport is doing, as this is something we haven't looked at in, well, a very long time, pretty much since we've built it, but we haven't really been expecting these airports to be doing much. We can take a look at the finances over a much longer period. It is losing us money, but that is because we can see, if we come back to this route, we're hardly carrying any passengers. I think we could probably sell one of these planes, and then let's just see if we have any faster planes that might help bring in more demand. So we do have this Douglas DC-3 that we can replace, and that doubles our speed, so hopefully that will mean that we can get more demand going, because if it's faster, people will probably be more inclined to use this route. So we'll have to see. It might work, it might not, but since we are still very early on in sort of flight and air traffic, I don't expect our planes to be making us money until much later. Alright, and so I think with that, let's take a closer look at what we've done so far, and then when we come back, we'll talk about what our next steps and some of our future projects can be. Alright, and so now that we're back, let's take a look at how things are going, the updates that we made in this video, and then we'll talk about some of our future projects. So first things first, let's come to our Salt Lake City port, and I did see that we have machines going to Houston now. I believe it was this train is carrying about 71 machines. I'm not sure if any have gotten dropped off yet. It doesn't, or it does look like we've dropped off some machines. We can see Houston is just starting to get some of those. And then, unfortunately, we do have this traffic here, so that's going to be something that we deal with in the next video. That'll be the first thing we do, because we don't want to be clogging up the streets of our cities. So we'll get on that as soon as possible. But anyway, coming back to Salt Lake City, if we find our boats here, I believe we should have some goods coming. So we can see here this boat will be the first delivery of goods to Salt Lake City, and that will be very exciting, because then we can start to gauge how much we can bring in through these boats. We can maybe even start to think about resources we could send over on the return trip to help pay for these boats. Maybe we fund Allentown through this port here, as the return trip isn't too far out of the way from Allentown. So maybe we can start to send goods, construction materials, fuel, food, and tools and such back on the return trip, since it's not too far out of the way to just come down the river and then head back. I think what that does mean is that's setting Allentown up to not really have a cargo train station for dropping off goods, which I think is fine. I think that'll be fun to have Allentown be sort of a port-only goods city. So everything will come in through this port, which, if that is the case, we'll have to severely ramp up the capacity here. But again, that's something we won't be exploring for quite a long time. But we can see here we do have goods starting to pile up in weight. It looks like everything at the steel mill is going well. We're able to provide still. And it does look like we have reached our limit. We're not maxing out all of the industries like we were before. But we are still able to move everything that we need to. And so we actually have this goods train coming in and dropping off a load of goods for us right now. And let's see how that has changed the finances on this line. So obviously it's not perfectly accurate just yet, but we can start to see before we were just barely making our money back per train, and then we added that third train to help increase the rate. And now we can see it looks like it fluctuates up and down, but it looks like our down periods at worst are almost in line with our expenses, and then our good periods are almost 10 million extra. So I think this is turning into a pretty successful line, and as we continue to increase the amount of resources we're bringing to our goods factory, maybe we can start to bring in resources by boat or something else to help fuel this, because the current configuration, these trains will never return a full load of goods, just because most of it has to go to Roswell or the rest of the map. But that's something we'll worry about pretty far down the line. And while we're here in Roswell, it looks like Roswell has reached its limits on its growth with the streets that we've provided. So I think we're going to have to maybe fill out this area here. So we have this road serving as a barrier, our goods factory out here. We might fill in this whole region with streets and allow Roswell to grow in there, since this will be closer to that city center. And it looks like we're almost 1,000 below our target population, so there's definitely room to grow. We can see this chart has exploded in recent years, so there's plenty of growth to be had here in Roswell. As for our highway, I think this is going to be something that we slowly expand. I don't think we're going to be pretty much completing the whole network in one video, but I think maybe next steps would be to extend it out to Tacoma, get a connection to Tacoma, and then with this highway I think we can have another connection into Houston somewhere in this area, and then maybe a connection up to the airport. So maybe we can have a different way for the buses to come, or maybe people can take their own private transportation to the airport. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a thing, but that might be something we explore there. But extending this highway will happen slowly. We'll just sort of take it one thing at a time. And another thing I think we're going to have to look at is what's going on here. It does look like this train is waiting for one of our other trains to clear the signal. It looks like it is starting to go now, but maybe we just add another signal somewhere in here, just so that this train doesn't have to wait so long. We'll add one like halfway up the hill. But maybe there's something we can do to help clear up these trucks so that we don't have such a holdup on our oil, as this is the only thing providing oil on this side of the map. So we definitely want to make sure that these trucks aren't getting stopped or held up at any point along the way. So maybe it's a bridge that goes over the tracks. That would probably be the easiest thing to do, and it wouldn't be too hard to just add a quick bridge. So that might be something else we do really quick. And then if we take a look at our destinations layer, we can get an update on how our highway is doing. It looks like a lot of people are coming from Houston to Salt Lake City. There's a decent amount of people doing the same way in the reverse direction. And it looks like we actually have some people starting to head out to Portland, which that's exciting to see. I was a little unsure if this highway would be efficient enough to actually be used due to how straight our train station is from Salt Lake City to Portland, but it does look like we're at least getting 1 or 2 people using it occasionally, and I'm happy to see that they're also using this off-ramp here and using that to get into the city. I think earlier I saw one that took the highway all the way up here, so that'll be fun to observe as time goes on. But I think with that, to get more demand generated for this highway, I think we'll want to start to really grow Portland. Now that's going to pretty much go hand in hand as we grow Salt Lake City and Houston, as now we can start to deliver machines and goods to Portland, which are the more in-demand resources here. But we can also start to scale up our construction materials, fuel. Once we start to figure out our oil situation in Houston, we can start to get that going a lot more. But overall, I think I want to really get Portland growing and fill up this area so that we can start to really see some use in these highways. And then probably like a few more episodes down the line, I want to start filling in some of these more emptier spaces. So this would probably just be like a small town that wraps around where these farms are. I think it'd be cool to have, I guess it'd be more of like a suburbs of Portland out here. It can have its own train station. It'll basically follow this road and the river, and that'll help generate demand in this area. So we'll see some private transportation get on the highway here, maybe come over and go into Portland, and just really get some life on this map. I think there's a lot of spaces that we can start to do that with, but I just wanted to get some goods moving around since we haven't had an episode like that in a little bit. So now that we have access to all 6 resources with these 3 cities, we can really start to get into the more cosmetic look of things and really getting into the nitty-gritty of detailing and whatnot. Alright, and so with that, I think I'm going to leave this video off here. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.